What is up, guys? So today what we have is a hardcore Australian knife. What we're going to do is go over its fine details, the company in itself, whether or not they're worth purchasing from, and whether or not this knife is something that you may want to purchase based on everything it provides and everything it gives you at the price point that they charge. So let's get into this review and see what it's all about. All right, so the box itself is pretty nice. It's like really stout, and of course they put some designs on it. I think it's pretty cool when a company actually takes time to make the box presentable, because it just makes you think that you have something worth value, especially at the price you pay for it. So of course at one end you have the LFK -05 D2 tan. So this is D2 steel. And then you got the G10 scales with those are also FDE. And then you have the belt attachment. So everything is like labeled really nicely on the side. I mean, I can't say enough good things about the way they presented this whole box and the contents inside, and you'll see what I mean once we open it. But as you can see, they have the little kangaroo guy on there, recycled trademarks and stuff like that. And then when you pop it open, if you look, it's pretty unique because the tab is offset, so the tab isn't centered up, which is kind of crazy until you see the color combination here. Typically I don't do unboxings only because they're a waste of time, but when I see a company that actually puts time and effort into the box and all the way everything's displayed, it's only proper to actually show their time and effort that they put into this type of stuff. So as you can see, there's an offset of black, and then your box color, your tan color. And to keep it consistent with the tab, what they did was they offset it. So that was pretty unique. And then you have the open tabs here, which keeps everything cinched down nicely. And then of course they put your paperwork in here. That's just what I paid for it and everything, a receipt basically. And then you're greeted with something like this. Okay, this is pretty crazy because it's a box inside of a box, as a display. So when you look at this, you're like, wow, you see the grip and everything. And then you pull off the first layer, and the first layer's like a C channel, nothing special. But when it's combined with the handle, they just want to grab your attention to, their design and all the effort they put into creating this portion of it. So you're greeted with that. They even put a little finger hole here so you could put your finger in to lift this out. Like, what company goes to that extent of designing their box? Not a lot of them do. So that's pretty unique. Okay, and then you get the knife, and again they have the cutout for the recess and everything. So we'll get into the review of the knife in a little bit, but you have everything laid out nicely. Okay, and then of course they could have just put a case over this, to cover it up, and then you pull it up just like this, but they didn't. What they did was they made it into a fold, so it kind of holds all your stuff into place, and it's not just bent. They actually went to the extent of actually making little dash cutouts in there, so they put those little indentations so that way everything folds perfectly. And what that does is it creates an internal box, right? So that way it could hold this, which it was pretty cool. And then they even put the little notch here so that way everything stayed aligned. I mean, seeing that in a company, it just makes me, want to buy something else from them, because you're getting a quality product. Okay, so in the pack, They got your authenticity card that basically tells you that this is the real deal. It's no fake. And then who it was packaged by and stuff. They give you a little kangaroo patch, and he's carrying an M4 with a suppressor. I believe he's eating a banana, and he's carrying a hatchet. And this could go on your gear that has Velcro. And then on the back side of it is just the instructions about the knife. And then your booklet. Very, very nice layout here. Like, I'm impressed with this whole, you know, package deal. Okay, so this knife currently costs $150 plus tax plus shipping, depending on where you buy it. And that's the price point you're going to have to pay for the majority of these knives that are worth purchasing, especially in this design and what they offer. You know, it offers a lot for that price. You know, you're not getting a Chinese junk clip. It's actually well thought out, fully encased. It's probably made in China, but it's engineered from a reputable place. You're getting a nice Kydex sheet, which is structurally strong. You know, it's not going to bend on you. It has some flex, but it will return to its shape. Your hardware and everything's nice and solid. There's no like wiggle in between the hardware. This knife itself weighs a substantial amount, so buy once, cry once. You know, you get what you pay for, especially in tools like these. Okay, so going into the way this houses up with the sheath. Okay, so it takes force, like there. It has a nice click, and it ain't going nowhere. And then that leads me into my cons. Okay, so I have some cons with this knife, and let me go over them right now. Okay, so first of all, the sheath is nice, right? It clicks in, it makes that snap. I like that. But these indentations here, you know, that prevent it from falling out, also prevent it from being pulled out easily. So if I pull this out, my hand's gonna, so your body mechanics are gonna pull out, but your mind's gonna be like, whoa, you're pulling it out too fast. Watch what's happening. And then you're gonna wanna push forward, right? Because you're gonna slow that motion down. And that could cause you to stab yourself. So as you can see, I'm pulling it and it's not coming out. Like, I'm really tugging on this thing, you know. And it's not these screws that are keeping it in place. It's this indentation on both top and bottom, and I'll show you. So you got to use force, and you got to push on the top of this. So what these indentations are doing is locking behind these cutouts. Okay, in a stressful situation, you don't want it that tight. You could see where it's lining up. So as you could see, this protrudes past this Kydex. So it's locking itself in, and it has to stretch that Kydex out for it to, there we go, for it to release. Okay, you got all that clearance on top, but these little push-ins are gonna hinder that motion. One thing you could do is heat it up and then fix it yourself. But I mean, at the price point, you shouldn't have to do that, right? This edge is nice and rounded, so that way it doesn't, you know, push into your stomach or however you have this set up. But that could also be a negative because you don't have nothing to push into. Your thumb's slipping when you're trying to pull this knife out. So it would be nice if it was contoured to the tip of your thumb or something, or had some type of lip, so that way you could push in and pull out. or just make the sheath a little bit easier to deploy. Okay, so that's one negative. Another negative is the design of this belt clip. It's bulky. Okay, I don't need all these positions, and that doesn't have to do with this company in particular. It has to do with what they chose for hardware, right? So the issue with this is you have all these unnecessary notches. If I'm running say a 1-inch belt, I don't want this extra protruding down if I don't need it. It's just stuff that gets in the way. It'd be nice if this company or the hardcore hardware Australia actually, you know, design their own, or contacted another company to design one where they have different belt sizes, so that way it's like everything's made for the person, you know, more custom tailored. Okay, so that's my only gripe about this lock setup. I have these on other knives as well, but I have the smaller version, and those are optional to buy separately. But it would be nice if they had a model like that, right? Lastly, this cutout here, corresponding with this cutout, this is an issue for me because when I grip it, I feel like this needs to be further up. It doesn't fit my thumb naturally. I feel like I'm being forced to crimp my thumb back and push in. Smaller hands, it might fit well. But I mean, the way this is designed, it fits my hand nicely, and I have a bigger grip. So I believe a person with a smaller hand might feel like this is a little bit too loose for them, this gripping position. So this would defeat the purpose of having this so far back. The location of this is like pinching these two fingers together like this. Okay. It would feel more natural if I had something or this elongated out, just like the Spartan blade. So let's look over the knife, give it a once over. Okay, so of course you have your markings up here. Let's say D2 Hardcore Hardware Australia. The blade itself is pretty sharp. Okay, it's a lot thicker than well, I mean, for a fixed blade knife that's more all-purpose knife, they usually have your thicker edge here, so that way it keeps everything structured. Because if it's too thin, like a kitchen knife, you know, you'll get some flex. So you could see that the blade cut right down the edge is perfect. I mean, it's not leaning to one side or anything. And I like a stout blade here, you know, because when you cut something, you know, you don't want your blade to flex or chip or whatever. You know, it's not like you're doing some precision cuts where, you know, you're operating. This is like an all-purpose knife where it's like you're going to use it to cut paracord, you know, cut stuff while you're camping, or, you know, if you need it for defense, you could use this for defense, especially with the weight, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But given its design, it's pretty nice with the spear point. You have your cuts here, which allows you to get grip on it. So when you actually get that full hand on it, you could really put some pressure in here without slipping off. The cutout here for your finger is really deep, and I like that, especially with larger hands. You could really, it really feels comfortable when you grip it, almost like a trigger on a gun. It just feels, it feels like your finger belongs there. On the opposite side, you have your tick marks, and then if you look at the blade itself, you have this deeper edge cut here and a lower edge cut up on top, and it's all uniform, so it basically follows that point design Let's see if I could get this on camera. Yeah, you could get it on camera right there. You could see it follows the contours, you know, so it's uniform. I like uniformity. One thing I did notice is this line here is offset from the point. So as you can see, it ends right there and the point is up here. See if I could get in on that. So the actual point is right here and it's a little higher. I mean, that's nitpicking, but it is what it is. That's their design. I'm pretty sure it's nothing like a manufacturer defect. So that's one thing that I would like them to see to get a point on the grind itself. But I know why they did that. It's because they make the blade go all the way up to about right there. So they got to do an offset. If not, it could potentially fold that blade because you're going to be running it thin. So this kind of acts as a backbone here. Okay. So if you're digging into something, it could potentially round that tip. Not a big deal. I mean, we're talking about a 1/16 of an inch or 32nd of an inch offset. The grind does go all the way up to the top. Just the very tip of that point does not is not collinear with that edge. So everything that you see here is well thought out as far as like the chamfering and stuff. So they didn't put a radius on these edges because once you put a radius on those edges, it knocks down these hard edges all the way around. You can see the, you know, the chamfer. And if your hands get wet or like real slick with blood or whatever it is you have on your hands, having some type of edge will give you more grip than having a radius. So let's kind of get in. So look right at this edge. You could see that. Same thing here. You could see that it's chamfered. So when gripping it, it gives you two edges to work with versus a rounded edge, which is really nice. Same thing with this top. They're all chamfered. Okay. It's a real deep cut here. Really deep serrations going across. And like I said, that's so that way if you're wearing gloves and stuff, these cutouts will work with gloves versus the smaller serrated areas where it's like you put your finger on it, especially with gloves, and you're going to slip unless it's a real hard textured knurl or something. So having the deeper cutouts allows you material or your skin to actually dig in there as you're pressing. So as we make our way to the rear of the knife itself, you have the G10 scales. And this is what I like about this company and that I haven't seen other companies actually do, such as Azula, Etsy Azula, is when a company makes G10 scales or micarta scales, they just make it for one side of the knife and then mirror it to the other, giving you left and right. Okay. What this company actually did is they did the same thing, except they put a little bit more time and effort into it. So as you can see, it's a fully encased tang all the way around. So, and what I mean by that is on the Etsy Azula, when the scale goes on, you could still see the backbone of the knife. Some people like that, some people don't. And then same thing with the bottom. But this company actually, you know, when buying scales, it's a lot more cost effective just to do one side and the other and leave the backbone open, only because you don't need to machine anything else. You know, they're flat on the inside. But this company actually went to the extent of machining out the opposite end. So let's see. You could also see it on the back side. So they went to the extent of machining out the opposite end, the inside of it, all the way around. So that way it makes one complete unit that's enclosed. And as you can see the parting line here, but it's perfect. I mean, there's no gaps in it at all. That's one nice thing. Also, when they did this, you could see this little tang here. It's kind of hard to make out, but this little piece, let's see if I could show that. Yeah, so you can see it right there. You see how it protrudes out past this plastic, or the G10 scales. It kind of protrudes down into a point. Well, that's so that way it doesn't slide backwards. Okay. And it allows it to grip in there. So, for instance, if this was cut all the way, say the G10 was cut flush in there, this potentially could have some sliding action. So also on the G10 scales, you know, of course you got the hardware, that's your star bits, so your Torx. And the nice thing about Torx is they don't round out as easy. So when you screw them down, you know you got a positive bite. Allens are a lot more common, but I mean, having the Torx means that you know you got something of good quality. Typically Allens are on everything and they could round out easily. Torx could do the same, but you got more insertion points. So when that Torx bit goes in there, you know you got more biting points. So that's my little overview, kind of a rant and rave about this knife. And if you like this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. If you want to see content like this and other content I'll be posting in the near future, definitely consider subscribing. Until next time, I'll see you all in the next one.